A 70-year-old woman suddenly gives birth in a nursing home. Doctors are shocked when they learn the truth. Mrs. Clare. Mrs. Clare. Are you all right? Lucy's panicked voice echoed through the St. Grace Senior Center dining hall, stirring up a commotion. 70-year-old Mrs. Clare had collapsed onto the table, her face pale and lifeless. The soup spoon was still trembling in her hand. Step back. Let me check. Dr. Richard, the facility's medical officer, rushed over, knelt beside Clare, and checked her eye reflexes. Lucy, blood pressure, quick. Yes, doctor. Lucy flipped open the blood pressure cuff, her hands shaking. 80/50, very low. Call an ambulance. Now. And get the ultrasound room ready. I need to see if there's anything abnormal in her abdomen. Her abdomen? Lucy asked, confused. Yes. Her belly, it's unusually distended. Richard lifted the patient's shirt, revealing a swollen, rounded abdomen, similar to that of someone 4 months pregnant. No way. Mrs. Clare, how could she? Lucy whispered. Go. Richard barked. What are you waiting for? Call the ambulance and alert Mrs. Angela. This is an emergency. 15 minutes later, Clare was lying on the ultrasound bed. Richard frowned at the screen, which displayed an unbelievable image. Oh my God, he exhaled. A fetus? What did you say? Lucy nearly screamed. A fetus? Are you saying Mrs. Clare is pregnant? Richard nodded, his voice grave. The fetus is about 18 weeks along. The heartbeat is still present. That's impossible. She's 70 years old. This must be some kind of medical anomaly. Richard turned to her, serious. This is no mistake, Lucy. I know how to read an ultrasound. But this is so irrational. I've never read any medical literature that says a 70-year-old woman can conceive naturally. No one has, Richard sighed. And that's why this is terrifying. A loud knock came from the door. A woman in her 50s, hair neatly tied in a bun and wearing a white lab coat, entered. Mrs. Angela, the director of the nursing home. What's all this commotion about? Angela asked coldly. Richard turned, trying to remain calm. Ma'am, I'm afraid we have a very unusual case. What kind of unusual? Mrs. Clare is currently pregnant. The fetus is developing normally. A deadly silence fell over the room. Angela stared at Richard, then turned to Lucy. You're telling me, a 70-year-old woman, is pregnant? The ultrasound confirms it. Richard replied, handing over the printout. She's 18 weeks along. Angela snatched the paper, read it carefully, then crumpled it in her hand. This doesn't leave this room. Lucy frowned. Ma'am, we have to report this to the health authorities. This is an extremely rare case, and no, and anything. Angela cut her off. Do you understand the media fallout this could cause for the facility? People will swarm this place, reporters, lawyers, tabloid scum. I won't allow that to happen. Richard took a sharp breath. Ma'am, this is a serious medical issue. We need support from obstetricians, endocrinologists. No. Angela slammed her hand on the table. I don't want anyone to know about this. From this moment forward, no one talks about it. I will handle it. Lucy hesitated, and Mrs. Clare. Does she know about this? Richard nodded, glancing at the hospital bed. Clare was now awake, her expression calm, as if she had heard everything. Do you understand what's going on, Mrs. Clare? Richard asked gently. Clare smiled faintly. I'm pregnant. Of course I know, doctor. Lucy gaped. You knew? Yes. Clare ran her hand over her belly. I felt it. Every day. Richard sat on the edge of the bed. But doesn't this seem strange to you? Aren't you surprised? I'm not. Claire looked at him with a strange gleam in her eyes. Because I've always hoped. Angela cut in, her voice sharp as a knife. Enough. Richard, Lucy, leave the room. I need to speak with the patient in private. Richard glanced at Lucy, then nodded. We'll be back later. In the hallway, Lucy leaned close to Richard and whispered, What do you make of all this? Something's not right. Richard gripped the handle of his medical bag tightly. Angela is hiding something. Her reaction isn't shock, it's control. Like she's managing a situation. You think there's a conspiracy? I don't know. But I'm going to find out. Lucy swallowed hard. I'm with you. That night, in the third-floor medical office, Richard reopened Claire's medical records on the computer. Something's wrong. He murmured. The last checkup, 2 months ago. No way. I remember examining her just 2 weeks ago. Lucy sat beside him, staring at the screen. Look at this. There's a deleted note. And this line here. Change in hormone dosage. Richard squinted. Who wrote this? Not sure. But that signature, it looks like Angela's initials. Richard narrowed his eyes. We need to check the medication cabinet. The two of them quietly made their way down to the pharmacy storage. The metal door was locked. Lucy glanced at Richard. I have a spare key, she whispered. For emergencies. Inside, the white fluorescent light lit up rows of shelves. Richard scanned the boxes quickly. Here it is. He picked up an amber glass vial. Reproductive hormone clinical trial not for use in individuals over 45. Lucy's eyes widened. Oh my God, fertility drugs. Exactly. And Angela secretly gave it to Claire. Richard clenched the vial in his hand. This is why she's pregnant. Lucy whispered, panicked. What do we do now? Call the police. Richard shook his head. Not yet. We don't have enough evidence. We need Claire to confirm, and if possible, find a way to confront Angela. Lucy looked at him, eyes wide. Aren't you scared, Richard? He smiled faintly. There's only one thing I fear, that we'll find out the truth too late. Mrs. Angela, I need a clear explanation. Richard walked into her office, voice calm but steely. Angela looked up from her stack of documents, her sharp eyes narrowing. I thought I told you not to bring that matter up again, Dr. Richard. I can't pretend I didn't see this. Richard placed the hormone vial on her desk. This drug is banned for elderly use, unapproved for clinical use. It was found in Mrs. Clare's medication. Explain this. Angela stared at the vial for a moment, then sighed, folding her hands. I don't know where it came from. So the initials in the dosage adjustment record, what, signed by a ghost? Richard snapped. I checked. Your initials 3 times, once per month. This is a serious violation of medical ethics. Are you accusing me? Angela stood, her voice low and threatening. I'm asking you, as a doctor, and as someone responsible for a patient who might be the victim of illegal medical experimentation. Angela stayed silent for a long moment, then looked Richard in the eye. If you don't keep your mouth shut, I'll report you for insubordination. My superior is my conscience. Not you. Angela took a deep breath. Get out. Before I call my lawyer. Richard stared at her for a moment, then turned and walked out. In the hallway, Lucy was waiting. She grabbed Richard's arm as soon as she saw him. Did you confront her? Yes. But she denied everything. Even threatened to sue me. Lucy sighed. I feel like the whole facility is under her control. Everyone's silent. I just spoke to Mrs. Abigail the nurse. She said she saw Claire getting injected with something at night but won't say more. Anyone willing to go public? No one. They're all scared of being fired. Richard furrowed his brows. Then we need someone on the inside Angela can't control. Someone who's already out. Lucy thought for a moment, then whispered, there's one person. Mr. Matthew, the food storage manager. He retired last month but still visits sometimes. He worked here for 30 years. Never liked Angela. Richard nodded. Good. Set up a meeting. As soon as possible. That afternoon, Richard met Matthew at a small cafe near the facility. You're the new doctor? Matthew asked, his eyes squinting with suspicion. Richard Bennett. I need to ask you some things about Angela. Matthew gave a dry chuckle. Everyone wants to ask about her. But not many have the guts to dig deep. I have a good reason. A patient is pregnant due to an illegal hormone. And I believe she's behind it. Matthew froze. You're talking about Claire? Richard nodded. You knew about this? I heard whispers. But I thought it was just gossip. Matthew sipped his coffee. Although, to be honest, I did see Claire being taken into the clinic at night several times. No one ever reported it. Angela handled everything privately. Did she have anyone helping her? Matthew nodded. The former head nurse Teresa. But she suddenly quit last month. Didn't say a word. Do you have her address? I think I can find it. Matthew pulled out his phone. But you'd better be careful. Angela has deep ties with the local authorities. If you dig too far, you might get crushed. Richard looked at him, eyes firm. I don't care. I only care about the truth. That night, the nursing home felt like it was wrapped in a thick fog. The staff walked quietly, barely making eye contact. The air was heavy. Lucy whispered, you see it, right? People are so afraid, no one dares speak. At dinner, I overheard a couple of the residents whispering about something strange growing in Mrs. Clare's belly, but they went completely silent when Angela walked in. Richard sighed. We have to act fast. If all this is the result of medical interference, Mrs. Clare is in extreme danger. Lucy nodded. I managed to message Teresa. She agreed to meet with you tomorrow. But only you. The next morning, in a small apartment in Savannah, Teresa, a woman in her 50s with graying hair, welcomed Richard with a cautious look. I don't know if I can trust you. You worked at the facility. You know what's going on. Teresa sat down and poured some tea. I know. I was the one who gave Claire the first injection. Richard froze. At the time, I didn't know exactly what it was. Angela said it was a hormone to help with nutrient absorption, improve memory. I believed her. Until I did my own research. And you found out the truth? Yes, Teresa's eyes filled with tears. I discovered it was an experimental reproductive hormone. Meant for animals. Angela had acquired a batch from an abandoned study in Texas. Richard clenched his fists. Why didn't you report it? I was going to. But the day before I submitted the report, I was threatened. My son works at the city fire department. Someone made an anonymous call, said if I talked, my son would never be safe. Oh God. I left. But the guilt still haunts me. Claire is a good person. She used to be a literature teacher. No children. No family. She's lived a quiet life. Richard closed his eyes. She deserves better. Teresa looked at him. If you're serious about seeing this through, I'll testify. But you have to find a way to protect me. I'll make arrangements. You have my word. Later that day, Richard returned to the facility, his face calm but his heart burning with urgency. He went straight to Claire's room. Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you feeling today? Claire smiled, my belly's still growing steadily. Earlier. I dreamt someone called me Mom. Richard sat down, gently holding her hand. Do you know what's happening? I do, Claire nodded. I'm not stupid, doctor. I saw the medications, I felt the changes in my body. But I didn't know what to do. Do you want to keep the baby? Claire looked at him, her clouded eyes lighting up with a spark. I never had another chance in life. When I was young, I got pregnant, but my family forced me to have an abortion. I've never forgiven myself. Richard paused. You've never told anyone? No one ever asked, Claire said with a sad smile. Now I think, maybe this is fate's final gift, a chance to make peace with the past. Richard squeezed her hand. I'll protect you. I promise. In the hallway, Lucy stood pressed against the wall, tears falling silently. Her phone rang. It was Matthew, and he said only one sentence, be careful. Angela knows what you're doing. Lucy, are you sure no one saw us leave the facility at midnight? Richard asked as he drove, glancing in the rearview mirror. Positive. I checked the cameras before we left. The night shift today is Eduardo. He passed out at 10. Lucy replied, checking her watch. We have about an hour to get in and out of the records room without being caught. Richard nodded slightly, his eyes filled with determination. They parked behind St. Grace Senior Center. Lucy quietly used a spare key to unlock the back entrance. They moved silently through the dark corridor toward the third-floor records room. Richard, I just want to say, if anything happens, I won't regret it. Lucy whispered as he unlocked the door. You won't have to regret anything. We're doing what's right. The door opened. Inside were dozens of filing cabinets and computers lining the walls. Richard sat at the computer and accessed the server. I'll check the medical record edits from the past 6 months. You find Mrs. Clare's paper files cabinet 11. Lucy nodded, flipping through the folders. Here. Clare's paper records. Richard stared at the screen. There's a system log file. Access code belongs to Angela. Wait. Here's Clare's chart from the 15th of last month. There's an altered section, asymptomatic normalized endocrine test results. Normalized? What does that mean? Lucy looked up. It means the initial results were abnormal but were changed to look unremarkable. Lucy opened the paper file. Look here. A handwritten note, different handwriting, seems added forcefully. Increased dosage to 0.5 milliliters per directive. No indication who gave the directive. Richard exhaled sharply. We need to take pictures of everything. Every page, both digital and paper. The next morning, during breakfast in the common room, the atmosphere at the nursing home felt noticeably different. Patients huddled in groups, whispering. Is she really pregnant? I heard there's a baby in her belly. I overheard the nurses talking last night. A frail old man sitting nearby spoke up, enough, everyone. No one knows anything for sure. Don't stress Mrs. Clare out. Mrs. Clare entered, her hand resting on Lucy's arm, her expression calm. A few residents fell silent immediately, others watched her with a mix of curiosity and fear. Good morning, everyone. Clare said aloud. I know what you're all talking about. Lucy stepped forward to intervene, but Clare gently shook her head. Yes, I'm pregnant. She said, lifting her chin. And I'm not ashamed of it. An elderly woman spoke hesitantly, but... Clare, you're 70. I know. But this child didn't come to me because I wanted it. It came because fate decided to give me a chance to make amends for a mistake I made long ago. The room fell silent. Then an old man named Michael clapped softly. Well, I'm 78 and still wish someone would call me Dad. If you have that chance. I'm happy for you. Claire smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. That afternoon, Richard invited Matthew to his office to show him what he and Lucy had found. These are the edited notes. Here's the initials. And this is the prescription with the forced addition. Matthew frowned. That's definitely Angela. I've seen how she writes slightly slanted to the left. This prescription matches exactly. Richard took a few more photos and put the files away. I need another witness. Would you be willing if this goes to court? Matthew gave a weary smile. I'm old. I'm not afraid of anyone anymore. They've silenced me plenty of times. But this time, I'm on your side. That night, Angela summoned Richard to her office. I heard you accessed the records room without permission. Explain yourself. I was reviewing Mrs. Clare's medical file. Without my authorization. Richard looked her straight in the eyes. Didn't need it. I'm her attending physician. Angela stood up, her voice as sharp as a blade. Be careful with your actions, Dr. Richard. I have the authority to report you for breaching protocol. And I will if necessary. Are you afraid of being exposed? You have no proof. Not enough for the police, maybe. But enough to enrage the public. Angela clenched her fists, taking a step back. You're playing a dangerous game. Richard stepped out, leaving behind one final remark, you're far more dangerous. The next day, Teresa, the former head nurse, unexpectedly appeared at the facility. She walked into the common room where Clare was reading. Mrs. Clare. Clare looked up. Teresa. I'm sorry, Teresa said, her voice trembling. I'm the one who gave you the first injection. I didn't know what was really going on. I trusted Angela. Clare closed her book. But now you know, don't you? Teresa nodded. I'll testify. I don't want you to go through this alone. Lucy stepped beside them. That makes one more on our side. That afternoon, Richard presented all the collected evidence to someone important, Mr. Miles, a medical ethics lawyer and an old friend. These are the witnesses, Nurse Lucy, supply staff Matthew, former head nurse Teresa, and the patient herself, Clare. All willing to speak up. Miles flipped through the files, thoughtful. Wow, this is one extraordinary case. But I'll warn you, Angela won't go down without a fight. She has powerful connections. I don't need to win right away. I just need to bring the truth to light, Richard said firmly. Miles nodded. All right. I'll file the complaint with the Boston Health Department tomorrow. But you and your witnesses need to be ready for dirty tactics. Richard clenched his fists. I've been ready since the day I heard that baby's heartbeat. That night, the nursing home seemed to tremble under a storm of rumors. Some nurses whispered quietly, others avoided Richard altogether. A few patients were even banned from speaking to Mrs. Clare. Lucy whispered to Richard, Angela's quietly isolating her. Some longtime staff were suddenly put on unexpected leave. Richard nodded. It's okay. The more pressure they feel, the more their true colors show. Lucy hesitated, what if she tries to hurt Clare? Richard clenched his hands. We won't let that happen. No one touches her again. In Clare's room, soft light glowed from the bedside lamp. Richard sat next to her. I'm afraid you might feel hurt by everything that's happened. Clare smiled gently. No, dear. For the first time in my life, I feel like I have a purpose. You're not angry with Angela. Of course I am. But anger won't help this baby grow. Clare placed a hand on her belly. I forgive. But I don't forget. Richard was silent for a moment. I promise I'll protect you. Until the day this child is born, and beyond. Clare looked at him with complete trust. Thank you, Richard. I believe in you. Outside the door, Lucy stood silently. And farther down the dark hallway, another pair of eyes was watching everything, Angela. Richard, you have to hear this. I just found this in Claire's medication drawer, Lucy said breathlessly, holding a pale blue vial with a faded label. Richard grabbed it, eyes locked on the label, H29, experimental hormone not for human use. God damn it, he hissed. This is it. The hormone's still in preclinical trials. What's it doing here? Lucy's hands trembled. I don't know. I was organizing Claire's drawer. It was tucked deep in the back, wrapped in cloth. Maybe she didn't know it was there. Richard opened the vial, sniffed it lightly. Odorless. But injectable. This type was only tested on female monkeys and rats in last year's study at the San Francisco Institute of Biological Sciences. Lucy quickly searched on her phone. Here. I found the research report. H29, stimulates ovarian activity, increases endogenous estrogen, causes hormonal disruption in aging animals. No mention of human trials. Richard growled, so Angela stole this from an incomplete study, and secretly injected Claire. Lucy's breath caught. I think she sees Claire as a lab rat. Richard placed the vial in his lab coat pocket. We're confronting her. Right now. Director's office. Angela sat behind her desk, eyes cold as ice as Richard burst in. Don't you know the basic courtesy of knocking? She asked, voice flat. Richard didn't answer. He set the vial down on the desk. Explain this. Angela glanced at it, then smirked. So you found it. You admit it? Admit what? That I risked my career to open a new door for medicine. Yes. That I used Claire as the foundation for a study no one dared to attempt. Also yes. And that she is truly pregnant. It's a scientific miracle. You had no right to make decisions about someone else's body. Richard shouted. Claire never consented to be part of your experiment. Angela leaned on the desk. She didn't object. That's consent. That's coercion in the shadows. You're so naive, Richard. Do you think medicine progresses by waiting around? Do you think we got vaccines and cancer treatments by sitting still? No. It's thanks to people who dare to go first. Who dare to sacrifice. No. It's thanks to consent. To ethics. No one has the right to violate another person, not even in the name of science. Angela went quiet for a second, then let out a dry laugh. I knew this day would come. And I have enough dirt on you to keep your mouth shut. Richard narrowed his eyes. What dirt? Proof that you misprescribed medication to a patient last year. Remember? The Alzheimer's patient, Philip, you gave him double the standard dose of antipsychotics. That was a printing error. I reported it, apologized to the family, and corrected the record. Still, the original file exists. Richard's voice turned icy. You're threatening me? No. Just reminding you that your career is just as fragile as the one you're trying to destroy. Richard picked up the vial. I'm not afraid of losing my job. But you should be afraid of losing your freedom. That night, Lucy and Teresa sat in the common room, speaking softly. Do you think Richard's in danger? Lucy asked. Yes. She's becoming more extreme. I once saw Angela fire a nurse just for saying the wrong thing by accident. Teresa glanced around. We have to protect Claire. Before she does something worse. Can you stay with Claire tonight? Lucy asked. I'll keep watch outside her room. Teresa nodded. I brought a travel mattress. The two stood. From a corner of the room, Matthew stepped out. I heard everything. Lucy jumped. Mr. Matthew? Shoo. I've been standing here the whole time. Things are getting worse. I just overheard Angela on the phone. She sounded tense. Said something about a temporary solution to end the suspicion. Teresa went pale. She's planning to kill Claire. Matthew was grim. I'm not sure. But the look in her eyes, she's not about to back down. In the hospital room, Richard spoke with Clare. Have you noticed any strange symptoms? Headaches, dizziness, cramping? Claire shook her head. No. I'm fine. But, lately, I've felt like someone's been entering the room at night. While I'm half asleep. I feel a hand touch my neck. Richard's face went pale. You're never to be alone again. I'll arrange protection. Claire looked at him, worried. Are you sure this is worth risking your life for? Absolutely. No one has the right to toy with someone else's body like this. Claire nodded, gently placing her hand on her belly. The baby, he's kicking stronger every day. Maybe he knows there's a battle going on out there. Richard smiled. And he's not alone. The next morning, a secret meeting was held in the auxiliary dining room. Present, Richard, Lucy, Teresa, Matthew, and attorney Miles. Miles placed a file on the table. I've officially filed a complaint with the Boston Medical Ethics Board. It'll take 72 hours for a preliminary investigation. Richard asked, what can Angela do in the meantime? She might act more recklessly. Matthew chimed in, I know how to keep watch. I have a key to the medical supply room. If she takes anything unusual in the next few days, I'll know. Lucy said, I'll monitor the security cameras. I took a security course. I can install a mini-cam in Claire's room. Teresa nodded. I won't leave her side. Miles looked around. Good. But remember, absolute silence. If this leaks, Angela will destroy the evidence. That night, the camera was installed. Lucy monitored it from the nurse's station computer. 11:40 p.m. No one entered. 12:15 a.m. hallway lights flickered. 12:18 a.m. a figure in a white lab coat quietly opened Claire's door, holding a vial. Lucy held her breath. Richard stood behind her, frozen. The figure approached the bed, seemingly about to inject something. Teresa suddenly jumped into frame, grabbing the person's arm. The figure's face became visible. Oh my God, it's Beatrice. Lucy gasped. The night shift nurse. Richard clenched his fists. She sent someone else to do it. Cowardly to the core. On screen, Teresa snatched the syringe and yelled, Security. Someone's trying to inject a foreign substance into the patient. Beatrice fled. The screen shook. Richard dashed out, sprinting toward Wing D. 3 minutes later, he and a security guard returned with Beatrice in custody. What were you going to inject into Mrs. Clare? He shouted. Beatrice trembled. I was just following orders. Whose? Mrs. Angela's. What were you trying to inject into Mrs. Clare? Richard yelled again, his face red with fury. Beatrice sobbed, eyes swollen. I don't know, it was an unlabeled vial. Mrs. Angela gave it to me. She said it was just a sedative to help the patient sleep. Lucy stepped forward, snatching the syringe and holding it up under the light. The liquid's cloudy yellow, doesn't look like any sedative I've ever seen. Teresa clenched her jaw. It's definitely something meant to hurt Claire. Richard turned to Beatrice, his voice icy. You don't sneak into a patient's room at midnight with a syringe unless you know it's wrong. So why did you do it? Beatrice broke down crying. I owe Mrs. Angela a lot. She paid for my son's medical treatment. I couldn't say no. Matthew growled, so you blindly obeyed, even knowing it was wrong? Richard pulled out his phone and dialed. You'll have to explain this to the police. Beatrice collapsed. Please. I'll confess everything, I swear. 15 minutes later, a police car arrived at the nursing home gate. Two officers entered, Inspector James Miller and Lieutenant Charles Turner. One of them walked straight to Richard. "We're Inspector James Miller and Lieutenant Charles Turner. You placed the call?" Richard nodded. "Yes. This woman attempted to inject an unidentified substance into an elderly patient during the night without any medical authorization." Lieutenant Charles asked Beatrice, "Do you have a prescription or any doctor's note for this?" Beatrice shook her head, eyes downcast. "No." James glanced at Richard. "Who told you to do this?" "The director. Mrs. Angela." The two investigators exchanged a look, then turned to Richard. "We'll need to speak with her directly. Can you take us to her?" "Right now." Angela stood outside her office door, as if she had been expecting them. She folded her arms and smirked when she saw the two officers with Richard. "I guess you just couldn't let it go, could you, Richard?" James spoke firmly. "Ma'am, we have a witness statement saying you ordered the injection of an unknown substance into Mrs. Clare without proper authorization. We need your cooperation." Angela gave a faint laugh and turned back toward her office. "Come in. No need to make a scene." Charles followed closely, his hand near his holstered weapon. Richard, Teresa, and Matthew waited outside, listening to the conversation echoing from within. "You know, Beatrice had no authority to administer anything to a patient. I gave no such order. Perhaps she misunderstood. But she says you handed her the syringe." "The word of a nurse under pressure is not legal evidence, Inspector." Charles asked, "What about the experimental hormone H29? How do you explain that?" Silence. Then, after a long pause, Angela spoke slowly. "I won't deny it. Yes, I obtained a small amount from an old research facility in San Francisco. I was a consultant there before joining this nursing home." Richard burst in. "So you admit it? You gave Claire an unauthorized reproductive hormone?" Angela turned to face him, her eyes showing no fear. "Yes. And I don't regret it." James frowned. "Why would you do that? Did you not consider the consequences?" Angela walked slowly to the window, gazing out at the courtyard. "All my life, I've been an endocrinologist. I've seen so many women crushed by infertility. I've seen how society discards the elderly like broken tools. I wanted to prove that reproduction isn't just a privilege of the young. I wanted to create a miracle." Richard's voice caught. "A miracle can't be built on a crime." Angela turned back, locking eyes with him. "I never forced her. Claire didn't say no. She knew what was happening. And she accepted it." Charles took notes. "But she wasn't given full disclosure. She didn't sign any consent forms." "Yes, that was my mistake. I trusted instinct over protocol," Angela sighed. "I rushed things." Richard gritted his teeth. "You played God. But you're not God." The next day, the nursing home was placed under supervision by the Boston Health Authority. An investigation team arrived to seize records, medications, and equipment. From a distance, Lucy whispered to Richard, "We did it. She's been suspended immediately." Teresa smiled faintly. "But I'm still worried about Claire. Without Angela, this place might fall into chaos." Matthew interjected, "I spoke with the City Oversight Board. They'll appoint a temporary director. I even recommended Richard." Lucy burst into laughter. "Are you serious?" Richard shook his head. "I just want to protect Mrs. Clare and the baby. Titles don't matter." Claire sat in her chair, hand gently rubbing her belly, looking out the window. Richard entered the room holding a bundle of flowers. "I brought you lavender. It's your favorite, isn't it?" Claire smiled. "Thank you. You really do remember." Richard pulled up a chair beside her. Angela confessed. And she'll go to prison? Claire asked softly. Possibly. But she still believes she did the right thing. Claire fell silent for a moment. I don't hate her. She did wrong, but she came from a place of good intention. She thought she was giving me a second chance. Even if the method was unforgivable. Richard said nothing. Claire looked at him. You don't need to feel guilty. You did the right thing. And I'm still grateful for this baby. You're not angry? No. Without her, I never would have heard that heartbeat inside me. I've lost so much in my life. Now, I've gained a piece of it back. Richard held her hand. I promise. I'll be with you until the end. Claire smiled. And when this baby grows up, you'll be the first person he calls father. Richard froze. You fought for him more than anyone. Who could deserve it more? The next morning, Matthew and Teresa held a small gathering in the common room to announce that Angela had been officially indicted. The elderly residents sat quietly, their faces full of worry. Teresa stepped up. We know these past days have been chaotic. But things are finally moving in the right direction. Matthew continued, Mrs. Clare will receive special medical supervision. And all decisions about her health will involve Dr. Richard, who I believe is the most ethical person in this place. An elderly woman stood. I used to think Claire was bad luck. But now I see she's braver than all of us. The room broke into applause. Claire sat at the back, tears running down her cheeks. Lucy walked over and whispered, You've inspired this whole place. Claire smiled through her tears. I only did what any mother would do. As the sun began to set, Richard and Lucy stood in the courtyard. Do you think this is the end? Lucy asked. No. But at least we've pulled back the curtain on the truth. And the baby? Richard looked up at the glowing orange sky. He's proof that even when everything seems dark, life still finds a way to bloom. You should rest a little more, Richard said as Claire struggled to step into the hallway on her weak legs. No, Richard. She smiled. I need some fresh air. And I need to face those stairs. Lucy walked over. If you get tired, we'll push the wheelchair. Claire shook her head. No. I want to walk. Even if it's just a few steps. Richard nodded. All right then. But if anything feels off, you have to say so. Claire gave a small nod. She stepped into the hallway, where a few other residents were sitting on benches. They looked at her with mixed expressions, curiosity, disbelief, discomfort, and admiration. An elderly man, Mr. Leonard, slowly approached. Claire, is it true, you're really pregnant? Yes. Claire answered with steady eyes. I'm pregnant. Truly. Mr. Leonard hesitated. I used to think, you were being tricked. I wasn't, Claire took his hand. I wasn't tricked. But I was used. Lucy exhaled quietly. Claire continued down the hallway, and one by one, the residents began nodding in respect. Matthew came up from the far end, holding a cup of tea. Mrs. Clare. He held it out. Chamomile tea. Helps with sleep. I made a little too much last night. Claire laughed. Thank you, Matthew. He bowed his head. I doubted you before. Now I see how small-minded I was. We all doubt sometimes, she said gently. What matters is that we move past it. Richard nodded softly, then turned to Lucy and whispered, She's becoming a symbol. Lucy watched Claire. A living symbol, and a pregnant one. That night, Claire lay in her room, stroking her belly, eyes gazing at the ceiling. Richard sat nearby. I still remember the first time I heard the baby's heartbeat, he said with a smile. I thought the machine was broken. I remember your face then. Like you'd seen a ghost. Weren't you scared? I was. But not terrified. More like. I felt at peace. Richard frowned. Did you know beforehand? Not clearly. But I sensed it. My body felt different, my heartbeat changed. Then the nausea came. That's when I knew. And you didn't tell anyone? I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. Or if they'd let me keep it. Richard sighed. Because of what happened before, right? Claire paused. After a moment, she spoke. I was 19. A new schoolteacher. I fell for someone, sweet, gentle. But when I got pregnant, he vanished. My family was furious. My father forced me to get an abortion. Richard sat in silence. I had no choice. Lying on that table, hearing the machines. I knew I'd lost a piece of my soul. I've never forgotten that emptiness. You never told anyone? Claire shook her head. No one asked. No one needed to know. Richard gently squeezed her hand. I'm sorry. No need. You didn't cause that pain. Claire smiled sadly. In fact, you're the first person who's ever made me feel protected. Lucy walked in with a cup of warm milk. You should drink this before bed. Claire took the cup, her eyes soft. Thank you, daughter. Lucy froze, blushing. What did you call me? Daughter. Claire said clearly. Because you've been here for me like a real child would. Lucy stood silently. Richard smiled quietly. The next day, Matthew organized a small gathering in the backyard. He brought out some chairs, herbal tea, and biscuits. We need something gentle after the storm, he said with a grin. Especially for our brave expectant mother. The patients gathered around, some smiling, others in tears. An elderly woman named Isabella stepped forward, her hands trembling as she handed Claire a knitted blanket. I made this, 3 years ago. Never had anyone to give it to. Now I think it belongs to your baby. Claire choked up. Thank you so much. Mr. Leonard raised his cup of tea. Claire, I once thought you were bad luck. Now I apologize. And I believe your baby will change all of us. Applause filled the garden. Richard whispered, I've never seen this place feel so warm. Lucy nodded. She's not just carrying a baby. She's carrying hope. That evening, Claire was writing in a notebook. Richard walked in. You're writing a diary? No. A letter to the baby. Richard sat down. Can I read it? Not now. One day. When he's old enough. But there's a part I want you to hear. She opened the notebook and read slowly. My dear child. I have nothing to give you but this heart. It has been shattered, forgotten, and frozen. But when you arrived, it melted. I don't know what this world will offer you, but I promise. I will never leave you, the way I was once left. You are my second chance. A late dream, but a beautiful one. Richard held her hand tightly. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just stay. Lucy stood quietly in the doorway, eyes wet with tears. You're going to be a wonderful mother. Claire smiled, her tears falling. The next morning, Richard met with Miles the lawyer. The health department wants to speak with Mrs. Clare. They need to confirm that she's voluntarily keeping the baby, without coercion. Richard nodded. Okay. But I want someone to go with her. Miles smiled. You think I'd let her go alone? I'll represent her myself. Lucy chimed in, and I'll go with her, if Mrs. Clare wants me to. Richard looked at Miles. Do you think, is there a chance they'll pressure her to terminate the pregnancy? No. But they might try to influence her. This case has no precedent. A 70-year-old woman, pregnant from experimental hormones. Richard said quietly, then let's make her the most beautiful precedent they've ever seen. At the meeting, Claire sat across from 3 representatives of the health authority. Miles and Lucy were seated on either side of her. One of them asked, "Mrs. Clare, are you fully aware of your current condition?" "Yes," she answered clearly. "I'm pregnant, at 70, due to the effects of a hormone that has not been approved for use." "Did you consent to the use of the hormone?" "No. I didn't know. But I didn't resist it. And I chose to keep the baby." "Are you afraid of the health risks?" "I've lived 70 years. How much time I have left matters less than who I live for. Now, I live for my child." The second representative took notes. "Were you ever forced to keep the baby?" "No. I'm keeping it because I want to. No one told me to." The third, an older man, smiled. "I have a 10-year-old granddaughter. And I've never heard her mother say anything that beautiful." Everyone chuckled lightly. Miles nodded at Claire. Back at the facility, Claire was tired but her eyes shone brightly. Lucy helped her into the room. "You did really well." "Thank you. Now I'd like to rest a bit. But before that." She reached out and took Lucy's hand. "Would you be the baby's godmother?" Lucy froze. You really mean that?" "More than anything I've ever said." Lucy hugged her tightly, tears streaming like a river. Richard walked in and saw the scene. He simply smiled in silence. Just as Lucy stepped out of Claire's room, she ran into Teresa in the hallway. "She's asleep already?" Teresa whispered. "Yeah, she was tired after meeting with the health board. But she's so happy, you know." Lucy smiled gently. "I've never seen anyone look that exhausted and that joyful at the same time." Teresa squeezed Lucy's hand. "Maybe that's what it feels like when life begins again." A voice cut in, "It's not just her starting over. It's all of us." Lucy turned around. "Mr. Matthew. Long time no see." Matthew smiled. "I've been reviewing the staff list. Now that Angela's gone, the interim board asked me to help with internal checks. And what I found isn't good." Teresa frowned. "What do you mean?" "There are at least 3 employees who were indirectly involved in the hormone project. They stayed quiet out of fear of losing their jobs." Lucy clenched her fist. "We need to get them out of here. Immediately." "It's not that easy," Matthew sighed. "One of them is the chairman's nephew." Richard approached from down the hallway, having caught the last part. "We don't need to fire them. Just reassign them to areas where they have no contact with patients." Lucy nodded. "And monitor them closely." Teresa murmured, at this point, even the smallest mistake could endanger Claire's life. 2 days later, an unexpected event shook the facility. The National Herald ran a front-page story titled, "70 and Becoming a Mother, a Miracle Among Us." The entire nursing home was abuzz. Staff, residents, family members, and even reporters gathered outside the gates. Lucy grabbed the paper and read aloud. "Mrs. Clare, a retired teacher, with no family, now becomes a symbol of hope and vitality. Her fetus, at 22 weeks, is developing healthily." "Richard, did you authorize this?" Richard shook his head. "No. Probably leaked from the health board. Either way, this was never going to stay quiet forever." Matthew frowned. "News spreads. There'll be supporters and critics." Teresa whispered, "And maybe danger too." One morning, Richard entered his office and found an unmarked envelope on his desk. Inside was a single piece of paper with the message. "Pregnancy at that age is unnatural. If you don't stop, there will be consequences." Lucy walked in just as Richard crushed the note in his hand. "What's that?" she asked. A threat. No signature. Lucy turned pale. We have to tell the police. I'll send it to Miles. But for now, let's not say anything to Claire. Lucy nodded. She doesn't need more to worry about. That afternoon, Claire sat in a common room with a few other patients. An older woman named Margaret spoke up. I read the paper. You're famous now, Claire. Claire smiled. I never wanted to be famous. I just want a normal life. Mr. Leonard added, but you're not ordinary anymore. You're a symbol. Claire shook her head. Being a symbol is exhausting. I just want this baby to grow up safe. A younger resident Ethan asked, aren't you scared? That it might not survive? Claire looked down at her belly. I once lost a child. I don't think the same pain can strike twice. Now. I have faith. Lucy sat nearby, silent. Teresa whispered, she's healing not just herself, but all of us. A week later, the nursing home had changed dramatically. The gloom had lifted. The halls were bright again, light conversations returned. The elderly laughed more. Richard walked down the hallway with Matthew. You've done well, Richard said. No. It was you. If you hadn't stood up, this place would still be ruled by shadows. Richard paused. I didn't do it for justice. I did it for Claire. Matthew patted his shoulder. Whatever the reason, you did the right thing. Lucy shouted from down the hall, Richard. We got the new test results. Richard ran over. Lucy held up the printout. The fetus is developing right on schedule. Strong heartbeat. Mother is stable. No abnormalities. Richard exhaled deeply. That's great. Teresa added, but she still needs plenty of rest. Her spirit's strong, but her body's still elderly. Lucy nodded. We're rotating shifts to watch over her. Tomorrow morning's mine. Matthew chuckled. The whole facility doting on one expectant mother. Never seen anything like it. One afternoon, Claire sat in the garden behind the facility. Richard approached, holding a piece of paper. You have a special visitor. Claire looked surprised. Who is it? A woman in her 50s stepped out, salt and pepper hair, familiar eyes. Clara? Claire stood up. The woman smiled. It's me. I read the article. I recognized your name. You were my teacher. Claire's eyes welled up. Clara, you've grown so much. I'm the mother of 3. But my real mother was you. They embraced tightly. Lucy and Richard watched from a distance. What do you think the world will learn from her? Lucy asked. That it's never too late to love. That evening, Claire wrote a few more lines in her notebook. My dear child. Today I met an old student. She called me Mom. Maybe when you grow up, you'll call someone that too. I don't wish for you to be special. I only hope you live with honesty, and never be afraid to love. Richard knocked and stepped in. Do you know what tomorrow is? What? Week 25. We'll have a 4D ultrasound. Claire smiled. I've prepared my heart to see your face. So have I. They looked at each other, saying nothing more, only eyes full of emotion. That night, Teresa was sleeping in the room next to Claire's when she heard a faint rattling in the hallway. She sat up, opened the door, and saw Matthew flipping through the shift logbook. What's going on? Teresa asked. The rear hallway camera lost signal 3 times today. I suspect someone's still coming and going, someone we don't know about. You think, someone other than Angela? Possibly. Or someone connected to her project. I've been checking the medication logs. A few vials are missing, no record of them being signed out. We need to tell Richard right away. Matthew nodded, his eyes heavy with concern. The next morning, Richard and Claire went to the city hospital for an ultrasound. The ultrasound technician Martha smiled as she looked at the screen. There we go, the face is very clear. Here's a hand, a foot, and the heart. Beating steadily. Claire trembled slightly. Can I hear it? Martha turned on the speaker. The fetal heartbeat echoed clearly, thump thump thump, steady and strong. Richard squeezed her hand. I've never heard a heartbeat more beautiful. Claire's tears fell. I've lived so long, to finally hear this. Martha smiled. Do you have a name for the baby? Claire glanced at Richard. I haven't thought of one yet. Richard whispered, Grace. What do you think? Claire nodded softly. A miracle, that's exactly what it is. Push gently, Richard. I don't want the stroller to shake too much, he's sleeping. Yes, Mrs. Clare. Richard smiled, carefully pushing the stroller through the main hospital corridor. I'm just a little nervous, that's all. Lucy walked alongside, carrying a small bag, grinning non-stop. This is our first time taking Grace out since the C-section. Can't believe how strong he is. Claire leaned over and looked at the rosy face, peacefully dozing. 2 months, and every day feels like a gift. A nurse passed by and gave a small nod. Congratulations, Mrs. Clare. Everyone at the hospital knows your incredible story. Claire smiled. Thank you, dear. Richard turned to Lucy. I still remember the morning of the delivery. My heart was pounding like a drum. Lucy nodded. I don't think she would have let the doctors touch her unless you held her hand. Claire laughed. You have no idea how scared I was. But the moment I heard him cry, it all vanished. Richard stopped. Want to go out to the garden? It's a beautiful sunny day. Claire nodded, eyes bright. Are there cherry blossoms? There are. Full bloom this time of year, Lucy said. Under the cherry trees, Claire sat on a bench, gently rocking the stroller. Richard and Lucy sat on either side of her. His name is Grace. Has anyone asked why you chose that? Richard asked with a grin. Of course, Claire said. I just tell them, because he's truly a miracle. Lucy looked at the baby. He has your ears. And Richard's frown when he's interrupted, Claire teased. Richard blushed. Do I really frown that much? Oh yes. Every time someone yells your name from across the room, Lucy laughed. A well-dressed man approached, holding a small bouquet. Mrs. Clare. Yes. She looked up. I'm Mark Lewis, a reporter from Well Life Journal. We would be honored to invite you for a live national interview. Your story has touched millions. Claire was silent for a moment. I don't want to be famous. Richard stepped in. We appreciate the offer. But Mrs. Clare needs time to recover. Mark nodded politely. I understand. If you change your mind, please contact this number. Lucy took the card. We'll consider it. After he left, Claire let out a breath. I don't want the baby growing up in my spotlight. He deserves a peaceful life. And he'll have that, Richard said gently. That evening, at Richard's house in Santa Fe, Claire held Grace in her arms while Lucy made soup in the kitchen. You know, Richard said, sorting papers, yesterday I officially submitted my resignation to the nursing home. Claire looked at him, surprised. Really? What will you do next? I want to start an organization, Richard sat down. One that defends elderly patients' medical rights. Lucy's going to co-found it with me. Lucy called from the kitchen, who said I agreed to that. Who do you think's been carrying all the registration forms in her purse? Lucy laughed. Classic Richard. Claire looked at them, eyes glistening. I never thought old age could be the start of something new. Richard took her hand. You're the reason we're doing this. Grace whimpered. Claire gently patted his back. There, Mama's here. Lucy turned and smiled. Every time you call yourself Mama, I feel like the whole world slows down. The next morning, Richard got a call from Miles, the lawyer. Hello. Richard, big news, Miles said quickly. The Boston City Court has officially convicted Angela. 12 years in prison. Richard stood up. Seriously? No parole. No suspended sentence. None. The court ruled clearly, unauthorized medical experimentation, falsification of medical records, ethical violations, and endangering a patient's life. My God. That's not all. The Department of Health is considering launching an independent medical ethics oversight body. Claire's case is the main catalyst. Richard was speechless. Miles continued, Want me to tell Claire? No. I'll tell her. At noon, Richard and Claire sat in the garden. Is there news? Claire asked. Richard nodded. Angela was sentenced to 12 years. Claire bowed her head. I should feel relieved, right? How do you feel? I feel sad. She truly believed in something. But she did wrong. Yes. And now she has to pay the price. Richard was silent. Claire went on, I don't hate Angela. But I know I have to live to prove that goodness still exists. You're doing that every day. That evening, Matthew and Teresa visited. We heard the news, Teresa said. The court was harsher than we expected. Matthew handed her a small bag. A gift for Grace. A handmade wooden rattle. I made it myself. Claire beamed. Matthew, you're like the ultimate DIY grandpa. Lucy ran out from the kitchen. Perfect timing. I just finished lotus seed chicken soup. Teresa clapped her hands. Always showing up at mealtime. Everyone laughed. The atmosphere was warm and easy. Richard lifted Grace up high. Look, son. This is your family. Grace smiled, tiny fingers brushing his foster father's cheek. Claire watched, misty-eyed. I never thought, that at 70, I'd finally understand what it means to love. Lucy wrapped an arm around her. And you'll keep loving, for a long, long time. That night, Claire sat writing in her little notebook. Today, you smiled. Not by reflex, but because you felt love. Maybe I'm old and frail, but I know, happiness is real. Richard walked in. Not sleeping yet. I wanted to write these beautiful things down before they slip away. We'll hold on to them forever. You know that. Claire smiled. You're right. Something about this makes me believe the future will be bright. Grace stirred softly. Claire and Richard both looked down at the baby. No words needed. Outside, the night wind whispered through the tree branches. Spring was in full bloom. Mrs. Clare, it's such a beautiful morning. Would you like to go out for a walk? Richard asked as he stepped into the room. Claire was putting a sweater on Grace, then turned and smiled. Of course. Every day spent inside feels like I'm wasting a perfectly good spring. Lucy walked in, carrying a bag with baby bottles. Let's go to the park near the square. They have a playground for kids. I think Grace will love it. He's only 2 months old, Lucy, Richard laughed. But his brain is developing. Don't you read the news? Claire hugged Grace, whispering, See that, my little one. You can't even talk yet and they're already urging you to learn. Richard shook his head. You know, this house used to belong to a doctor. Now it's practically a daycare. Better than a nursing home, Claire smiled, stepping out onto the porch. At the park, Matthew was waiting by a wooden bench. Teresa was sitting nearby, reading a book. When she saw them, she waved. "There's baby Grace. Let's have ourselves a little picnic," Matthew said as he opened a basket, sandwiches, juice, fresh fruit. Claire sat down and placed Grace into the stroller next to her. "I never dreamed of a day like this. An outdoor meal, surrounded by friends, and a child calling me Mom." Matthew opened a container and handed it to Lucy. "Apple pie. My secret recipe." Lucy took a bite and her eyes widened. "Mr. Matthew. You should open a bakery." "I can't. I have to watch over this little guy." He pointed at Grace. "My grandson, after all." Richard sat beside Claire. "I received a letter from the Academy of Medical Sciences." "What letter?" Teresa asked. "They invited me to speak at the annual conference. The topic, medical ethics in research involving the elderly." Matthew whistled. "Look at you, moving up in the world." Lucy clapped. "You have to tell Claire's story." Claire smiled. "I'm just a supporting character in your life." Richard shook his head. "No, you're the heart of it." That evening, after everyone had left, Richard made tea and brought it to Claire's room. "You smiled a lot today," he said. "I feel my heart growing lighter day by day. It's like, each scar inside me is fading." Grace was sound asleep in his bassinet. Claire looked at him and whispered, "I used to think I was born to be alone." "Now you know you were born to be a mother," Richard said softly. "Yes. Even if it took 70 years, Claire chuckled. Lucy entered, holding a picture frame. "Mrs. Clare, I printed this one from the other day," she said, handing over a photo, Richard holding Grace, Claire looking at them with pure affection in her eyes. "Wow, it's beautiful," Claire said. Richard looked at the picture and went quiet. "Do you think you'll live to hear Grace say his first word?" "I don't just want to live until then," Claire answered. "I want to see him start first grade." Lucy placed a hand on her shoulder. "And we're going to help you make that happen." 1 week later, the Santa Fe Town Hall hosted the National Inspiration Award ceremony. The MC stepped onto the stage, and this year's recipient is none other than Mrs. Clare Anderson, the brave woman who became a mother at 70 and inspired an entire nation. The whole room rose in applause. Claire, wearing a beige dress, walked up to the stage with Richard and Lucy. The MC handed her the microphone. "Mrs. Clare, would you like to say a few words?" Claire held the mic, her voice trembling. "I never thought of myself as special. I'm just a woman who has known loss, silence, and pain. But one day, I heard a heartbeat inside me." She paused, tears rolling down her cheeks. "That was the moment I realized, it's never too late to love, to live, to begin again." The audience erupted into applause again. Richard squeezed her hand. Lucy whispered, "You did it." After the ceremony, a stranger approached. "Mrs. Clare." "Yes. I'm Sarah. I used to live in another nursing home, one that also had an unauthorized medical study. But no one dared to speak up." Richard stepped in. "Are you okay now?" "I am. Because of Mrs. Clare, I had the courage to file a lawsuit. And the Health Institute has opened a formal investigation." Claire took her hand. "You're not alone anymore." Sarah smiled. "I just wanted to say, thank you." The next day, Richard, Lucy, Matthew, and Teresa hosted a small party in the backyard. Grace lay in his stroller surrounded by balloons, flowers, cake, and laughter. "Anyone want to say something?" Matthew asked. Teresa raised her hand. "I just want to say, this is the first time I truly believe we can change something if we're brave enough." Lucy raised her glass of orange juice. "To Claire, to Grace, and to everyone who's ever felt like they were on the outside." Richard smiled. And to a better future, sparked by a baby in the womb of a 70-year-old mother. They all clinked glasses. Claire gently stroked Grace's hair and whispered, "You're a tiny miracle. But you're going to do big things." Late that night, Claire wrote the final lines in her notebook. "My dear child. Today, I saw you smile in your sleep. You may not remember it, but I'll never forget. Every cry, every frown, every stretch of your little hand, is a new part of a world I never knew. You came without warning. But you stayed, like light slipping through a dark door. Thank you, for choosing me." Lucy walked in, carrying a new photo frame. "I just printed this. It's from this morning, when you were holding Grace." Claire smiled. "I'll hang this one above my bed." Richard knocked. "Still awake?" "Yes. Just writing down the important things. Then let's read them tomorrow. For now, it's time to cuddle Grace to sleep." Claire held the baby close. "Do you think he'll remember these early years? Maybe not clearly. But I believe, he'll feel this love for the rest of his life." 1 month later, Richard officially launched the Life with Dignity Foundation, headquartered in Boston. Claire was the guest of honor at the opening ceremony. "We will fight for those who no longer have a voice," Richard declared. "And the first story we'll tell is Claire's." Hundreds stood and applauded. Claire bowed her head, eyes glistening. Lucy walked over to Richard. "What do you think Grace will do in the future?" Richard smiled. "Whatever he chooses, I believe he'll live with kindness. Like his grandmother." One morning in Santa Fe, Claire pushed the stroller down a cobblestone path, Lucy walking beside her. "I never thought I'd live to see this day," Claire said. "You'll live a lot longer. Grace needs you," Lucy smiled. Richard jogged up behind them, carrying a bag of warm bread. "And the whole family's waiting for breakfast." Claire looked up at the blue sky, the wind brushing through her hair. She placed a hand gently on Grace's head. "My dear child. We've made it through the darkness. And now, we live in the light." This story carries a powerful lesson. At any age, every person deserves the chance to live, to love, and to hope. Life is miraculous, and compassion and courage can heal even the deepest wounds. Mistakes, no matter how grave, can be corrected through truth and justice. Love knows no age, and family isn't just blood, it's those who walk beside us and love us unconditionally. Grace is not just a child, he is a miracle of belief.